Speaking of money, one of the things, and again, I'm looking at this today, is attributes that we should tell our congregations, me as a pastor, that we should be having our congregation look at and our politicians to elect. And one of the things, we are told to pay taxes as Christians when we are told to pay, but we don't like paying taxes that's going to go to what we consider ungodly things, such as abortion.
Sure.
we want our public servants in office to be good stewards of the money we entrust them with. And so what are some of these social issues that we are funding, such as abortion? What is the senator's view on these?
The senator has led the fight to defund Planned Parenthood. He understands it. He's 100% pro-life. He has led the fight to, and been very strong in his stance that marriage is to be decided at the state level. It's a states' rights issue. Now, again, that might be an answer that doesn't please some folks because they're like, wait a minute, it's to be a constitutional one man and one woman, da-da-da-da. Again, when you look at any law or power that you're going to give somebody, if you give Senator Cruz or anybody the power to make marriage laws at the federal level, well, then they can change those too. So marriage is best decided at the state level. That's the way our framers decided it. That's our Constitution. That's what's right and correct.
Well, actually, right. Wendy, the proper definition of marriage comes from the Bible, so we have to let the Bible make the decision as to what's the correct interpretation of marriage.
True.
What I see Wendy, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I see Wendy saying is if we're going to make it a law on the secular books, so to speak, that belongs right. At the state level. The choice, and under the 10th Amendment, I will totally agree with that. I mean, it should be at the state level if it's going to be made.
Absolutely.
I mean, it wasn't until actually within my mother's lifetime, goes back a little bit before me, where actual marriage licenses is a new concept. It used to be within the church and then registered with the state. Love to see it go back there, but that's a state's issue, and that's how it used to be a state's issue, and it should never have gone to the federal government. So
people don't realize we are in the next 8 years we are likely to replace 3 Supreme Court justices. We have key decisions on Second Amendment rights and other things that were decided on a 5-4 decision. We are 1 Supreme Court justice away from potentially losing our right to bear arms, our freedom of religion, which we're already seeing being challenged again and again. We could lose our right to homeschool. We could see, the fundamental transformation of our country is not complete yet. But if we don't elect someone who understands the foundation of our country, and Ted Cruz understands that better than any other candidate on that stage. And I say that because he memorized it at 13. He's fought before the Supreme Court 9 times and won for the very issues that we care about: religious liberty, 10 Commandments, one nation under God, Second Amendment. So if we don't elect someone who understands that, and we replace those 3 Supreme Court justices with liberals or the easy way, which is what happened with George W. Bush, we are going, and we've seen the effects of that with the Obamacare decision. We are going to see our country transformed in ways that we have not even imagined yet. That's very scary.
I'd like to put this warning out real quick. Every politician, and Wendy, I'm going to actually let Ted Cruz off the hook on this one, but every politician out there actually has a handler that helps train him on how to get the Christian vote. Okay? Every one of them. This is how you're going to get it. And the best way to tell, and this goes back to the integrity, the best way to tell is, do they have 2 different messages? One for the Christian and one for the secular. And you can actually hear it in the speeches if you pay attention to the candidates. And this is what we need to do, is really pay attention to what each and every candidate has to say. Because if they're talking in a church one day, they may have a totally different message than what they're actually saying elsewhere. And we have to make sure that their messages are consistent. And so far, I have not found an inconsistency in Senator Cruz's message. It's always been pretty constant. I am not endorsing him. I'm still looking at all the candidates. One
question: do you think that Ted Cruz would be favorable to the idea of Congress reviewing the Supreme Court and defining their parameters, and specifically in the judicial review area, where the Supreme Court has the power to review laws written by Congress and change the whole culture of this country. This, in my estimation, should be the dingo effect. Every year from now on, somebody should introduce a bill that says we are going to rein in the Supreme Court and we're going to limit their judicial rules to not being able to change the culture with a swipe of the pen.
Yeah, I think that speaks to, again, the foundational document of our country. The Constitution is very clear about what the Supreme Court is to do and is not to do. And I know that Senator Cruz understands that.
Yeah.
And that the Supreme Court has been out of control.
Right.
No doubt about
exactly
it. So,
right.
And he has Senator Cruz has a track record of one thing, it's being brave and taking action when needed. And so I believe he would use whatever tools he had to make sure that that the Supreme Court is honoring the constitutional bounds of which they've been given.
Well, see, the thing is, we should not be confined to the fact of wondering whether or not an appointee to the Constitution is going to actually follow. The Supreme Court is going to actually follow the Constitution. You see, it's nowhere in there that gives them the power of judicial review. They took that power, and
right,
and that power can be taken away from them because the laws can be written by Congress. And if we could get the Congress and get people elected that would concentrate on this for a while, then we could, because every piece of legislation that the Democrats have done has been approved by the Supreme Court. So they know one thing that we played early in the show where Hillary Clinton said she was not interested in changing hearts and minds. That's the approach that conservatives have always taken. They didn't want to take a law and force people to do their will, especially when it comes to Christianity. So what the Democrats figured out is that they won't do anything about us doing what we do with the Supreme Court and changing not only the hearts and minds, but the actual laws and using the force of government to carry out their communist, socialist propaganda.
Wendy and Phil and Del and Pastor Deitering, I think that, again, we have this focus on what this one man will do. And I agree, Ted Cruz has the visionary perspective that I want to see in a president, because that's what I want in a president, a visionary. Mm-hmm. But the truth of the matter is, if we the people don't get educated in our role in determining what the government does, or what the elected officials do, because as Pastor Deitering has said, we are the government.
We've got to get that mind. See, we have forgotten that as a people.
That's right.
We have forgotten that. Right. We have put so much over to the bureaucracies.
That's right.
That we have stepped back and says not just the politicians, we have now entrusted the bureaucracies that the politicians pick to run this, and they're not the government. Yeah. And we've got to re-educate the people, remind them that no, we are the government, because when I talk to people that say the government this and the government that, I says, do you realize who the government is? Well, is this person? No, you are the government. You are entrusting your vote to somebody. You are entrusting them to do what you desire. You're picking somebody who's most closest to your ideals. And that's the thing, is we need to, as a Christian, I'm going to pick someone who's closest to my ideals. Do I want a theocracy? No. I believe Christianity is a matter of faith, and you can't force it. But I want somebody who meets my ideals. That says, hey, a person's life is important. Hey, it's important to have freedom of religion. Hey, it's important to have these things. You're not going to be persecuted for what you believe, which is happening more and more with Christian faith. I want somebody who's going to have integrity, not just going to do what their political handlers tell them to do that's expedient for political purposes. These are all things we have to look at, but we have to remind ourselves constantly that we are the ones that are entrusting the politicians with the authority given to us by the Constitution.
I'm still looking for the politician. Oh, Wendy, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Pastor Rafael Cruz, he's been here twice, and
Yes.
we've gone all the way up to Gaylord, and we've spoken to hundreds of people around the state. And I spend a lot of time with him, and I see where some people will pay lip service. You can wave around the Bible, you can quote a couple of verses, you can talk in general terms. But I've spent enough time with both Senator Cruz and his father to know that their faith is very real, very deep. His dad quotes scripture like nobody's business, and the Constitution. He just intermingles them and quotes them both, and it's beautiful. But, he says that, I think it's like 38 million Christians stayed home in 2012.
Yep.
He said, we say that, God puts all authority in place, and we know that God is sovereign, but at the end of the day, if the righteous don't elect the righteous, all that's left is for the wicked to elect the wicked.
That's right.
And it is our fault. It's our fault Barack Obama is elected. It's everybody who stayed home and didn't get engaged and didn't get involved. And it's the primary voters, because the primary voters, that's where your vote counts. If you don't vote on March 8th in Michigan, you are not having your voice count.
Wendy,
There were
Wendy,
two counties in Michigan. Let me finish real quick. There were two counties in Michigan where the vote in 2012, the primary vote, was decided by one vote. Even in Grand Rapids, in Kent County, there were 80,000 voters, and the primary was decided by only 1,500 votes. There were 4 congressional districts that were decided by under 750 votes.
Wendy, we are at the end of the show. Is there a website that you'd like to give out real quickly?
Oh, yes, tedcruz.org. tedcruz.org.
All right.
Thank you, Wendy. Appreciate your call. You have a blessed day.
Thank you, you too.
Okay, folks, we are just about at the end of the show, but I think, well, everybody...
Well, I'm going to leave them with a quote from Charles McCullough. Stand for God, country, and family, and vote out every Democrat you can find.
Amen.
Thank you.
The Abolitionist Round Table invites the WAAM Talk 1600 listeners to continue the roundtable discussions by mailing correspondence to Art of Michigan, Post Office Box 135, Garden City, Michigan 48135.
Or follow Phil and Del at artofmichigan.com. You can also send emails to artofmichigan@hotmail.com. And most of all, continue to listen every Saturday and tell a friend.